Hey, how's it going? It's Zane Star, founder of Ships, and this is going to be our first dev vlog. So I'm just going to try and give you a kind of daily breakdown of a problem or something that we encountered today that we wanted to just like share about like what we're building and kind of how we're going about the process. So what I'm going to do is just jump into, we'll call it the problem of the day. So the problem of the day was, how do I like sort of figure out what I have and what other projects that are sort of large in the ecosystem have in terms of data for their smart contracts. So just to recap, in case you don't know, we're building out a secondary NFT market for Near. And so this market will allow you to trade NFTs. And so what I've gone about doing is trying to see like how can we support the existing projects in the ecosystem and what does that look like. So the first kind of step that I took was to just see what's there. So I went out and I purchased a bunch of NFTs in addition to whatever I already had. So if we're going to just pop into your wallet, boom, boom. Okay. Okay. So in this wallet, what I have here are a bunch of NFTs. So this NFT is from Mintbase. These NFTs are from Paras. And this is from Luminite. And this is from Mintbase as well. And this one's like a part of the series. And then this one is just kind of like a one-off from NearCon. And so there we go. We have a pretty big sample of what's out there in the space and some of the marketplaces that people tend to use a lot on Near. Okay, so what did I do to figure out what is what? So when I looked here, I noticed like, okay, this is like the final account address that's holding this particular NFT. So I kind of looked at the recent activity to try and figure out like, okay, what's the contract address? I'm sure there are other ways to do that. And so here, I know that I did this fairly recently, and I look here at the market contract. I see market at Mintbase 1.near, and I see that this says that the account that this NFT is represented on is Gambiara Mintbase 1.near. So this is the contract address. If I go here, this is x.paris.near. This tells me the contract address. If I go here, this is pluminite.near. So it's my contract address. This is my contract address and contract address. Okay, that sounds great. Now that we know the contract address, we can just kind of like figure out how do we get the data out. So with a marketplace, we want to know the token ID so we can make requests against that contract. And presumably all of these contracts are following the Near NFT standard. So we should be able to sort of interact with them without getting too specific into the individual project. And we'll take a look at like sort of what the data looks like. So let's pop into VS Code and see what we have going. Okay, so this is the VS Code, and sort of what I've done is this is a part of the project for Swapland. So we haven't pushed this up yet, but it's coming. And so just a quick overview or breakdown. What we've done is we have made an extension to OpenRPC to support the Near ecosystem. So what this means is that I'm able to write some documentation. So if we were to go here, I think this will just like show you some of the stuff that's possible. So this is for the multi-token standard that we're championing. And so basically, you're able to write some documentation to describe your smart contracts and share that. not only have that shared, but generate type safe clients for it. So I've done the exact same thing for all of the standards that exist on here. So the multi-token standard, the fungible token standard, and the NFT standard. So basically it just makes things super fast. And you're going to see in a moment exactly like how it works. So let's go ahead and close this. All right. So when I'm here at the top of the deck, you'll see this here, which is called NFT Client. And so what I've done is I have a bunch of like schemas in this OpenRPC document. So if we open up simple NFT, this describes all of the different methods that are a part of like a standard sort of NFT contract. And so you can see NFT token, NFT tokens. So if we were to dive into that, go to NFT tokens, pretty simple. You'll see a description like this. It's not that dissimilar from Swagger Docs if you ever use that. And so it tells us we have this from index, we have a limit, we have token results, which has a schema. And if we look into schemas, and we want to find NFT tokens, can actually probably do this without scrolling, but it's just useful to see how everything is kind of laid out. And so here we have what is an NFT token. It's a thing that has a token ID, and we can just kind of resolve all of these. And this is all token ID is a string, and so forth and so forth. And then what we do is we just have a script that runs and produces a final document. And that final document allows us to essentially generate a client in TypeScript. So if we move from a document, that may look from a document, here we go, we'll have this. So the document has generated all the types for all the methods. And where there's not a name, it will give you a mangled name, so that way there's no conflict on the type. But here we have the NFT metadata spec, the metadata symbol, and metadata name. And all of these types actually aggregate into the thing that they are. So here is the NFT token metadata. And what this does is allow me to very quickly figure out what data I can get access to that's a part of the spec. So that's like really not what I was doing today for like this particular thing. And we'll dive into this later in another video where I just like really deep dive into how you create this for your own contracts and how you share documentations and things like that. But it's really a lot of alpha there that I'm just kind of excited to cue you all in. All right. So if we look back to mainnet, so basically, let's recap what I wanted to do. I wanted to figure out the basic structure of the NFTs that I have in my wallet that I acquired from various like places over the internet. So that I acquired from various near smart contracts. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump in to this video and talk about like, what happens. So with this script, which is just like a quick one-liner, first thing I do is I construct an in-memory key store. I get that from Near API. Then I wrote a little helper function called get NFT contract. And so what this does is set up Near. We'll go through and basically construct a near connection for the network that you want to connect to. So it could be DevNet, could be mainnet, etc. And this is just like a little helper function that I wrote that just toggles between the two and just kind of makes things a little bit saner when you're setting up this. So setup near basically constructs a near object connection. And then from here, we have the OpenRPC simple NFT client, which is just a generic client that can call all of the NFT methods for a smart contract. So in this case, we set the context in which you were calling. So this is like the predecessor account, which is near account zane.near, and then the contract ID. And so the contract ID is just the near contract that you want to connect to. So this little helper function gives us a one-liner into getting data out. So what does it look like to get the data from Paras? So we already established that the contract is x.paras.near. One of the things I wanted to know is like how much supply I had. So I take the supply and then I say, okay, the total number in our case, I think is 3. And this right here is just me iterating over the set of NFT tokens to figure out like, did I get them all? What do they look like? And then here, I just did some notes or annotations about what I found. And so what I found was that the ID structure goes by sort of collection and then the edition number. And then this also structures the NFT metadata. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run this really quick, and then we'll see sort of what the results are down below. So I actually need to switch into the correct node environment. And now what I have here is just a little script, npx tsc, which is just going to compile the TypeScript. And then I'm going to run this script from the build. So nothing fancy, just that. And let's see what we get. So running. All right, boom. So it outputs some stuff. What did we learn? So we learned that I have the following NFTs. So NFTs for owner. Let's just actually scroll through this real quickly to see what it is that we actually called. Okay. All right, so here's what we output. We got all the tokens per owner, and then we just logged them. So in this case, 344:1, Zane, there's only one copy. It fills that out. It has a media hash, and it also has a reference hash. And so the reference is for the metadata, and the media is for like the metadata is the actual image. Okay, so when we go to the, say, the second line here, it's a little slow. When we go to the second one, we have spotted moose deer number 4. It tells us the number of copies. We have this reference hash, etc., and then so forth. And we see it's all the same sort of format where the series ID is prefixed with a colon and then the edition number. And these are like the copies that we have. So what did we output? We wanted to also see a couple of, let's see, let's scroll up here. Okay, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to also see what was in particular, if I could just retrieve the token ID, the token from the token ID specifically. So we're taking a look at spotted moose deer :3, and I own spotted moose deer number 4. And so this just confirms that yes, the series are aligned this way. Presumably it's consistent. I know Paras are great engineers. So yeah. Okay, now the next thing we want to know is like, what is the structure of the reference and the media hash? And so what we see here is that the base URI is specified from the token contract metadata, which is, we can tell from the client that returns back NFT contract metadata. We get this metadata, and then we are able to sort of output this. And we can see like, here's the icon for like Paras, etc. And this is where all of their data is. And so now we can go ahead and check out what mint base looks like. So we've already noted that the collection ID looks like this. And so we have an idea of what the NFT does. And we also know that our NFT client was able to just automatically know how to interact with any NFT on Paris because it implements the standard. So that's kind of the importance of implementing the standard. Which is funny because they started building before the standard even existed. So I think the same with Mintbase. So how to get Mintbase? All right, so we're going to look at what we're going to try and retrieve from Mintbase. So we're going to move and groove. All right, so the picture of nature that we had here, and we hovered over, we just quickly saw where it was from. And then we're going to go back into our code. And then we can see like, okay, so this is the thing that I like minted myself. Here is this NFT supply for owner, which is, again, what supply do I have? In this case, I know I only have one. We don't really need to do so much of the same verification. We're going to do it anyways. And then we're going to take a look at what some other members in this particular collection could look like. Or is it a collection, and what kind of metadata do we have? So let's go ahead and let this rip. Okay, so this is what Mintbase's contract looks like when they're creating an NFT. So the first thing was the photography that I had, and its number of copies were 4. And then it has a reference URL, and it has this in its extra metadata, which if we remember, the contracts from Paris didn't quite have extra filled out. And I think some of the contracts will and some of them won't. It's not necessarily a consistency thing. Okay, so here we have this reference, and then we do not have a media field, okay? Okay, the next thing that we're taking a look at here, because I only have the one token, is we wanted to take a look at how does this look if I request it in visually, which makes sense, cool. And then what does it look like if how do I know that I have a copy, right? And that like these things are actually associated on Mintbase. So with Paris, they had the series and then a colon and then the ID. And that would say like, okay, this thing is like related. So for Mintbase, however, that's not the same thing. It's just sort of consecutive entries, but really the thing that is the moment of truth is the reference. So here, what this is just actually a hash of the data, even though it's not in the reference hash field, that points to the underlying asset. So in this case, we can see that ID 1665 is the same as 1664. And I think that if we wanted to figure out like how all of these are connected, or to specify like what are the series that we're looking for. So let's say that we want to do a trade between any other asset that's within this particular series. What we would use is the reference, because that would be a way for us to sort of say that these things are the same, at least within sort of the Mint-based context. Okay, so we scroll down again, you can see all the approvals. This has like a royalty payout split. I'm just using some of the newer things from the spec. And then here is the contract metadata. And again, we can look at the base URI. We see this is rweave. We're going to take this rweave snapshot real quick. And then we're going to paste in the reference hash. So the everyone had a media, and the media URL is just basically the way that you pull up the image. But in this case, Mintbase has sort of a two-tiered system in which the reference metadata is the only data you get, and the reference metadata then contains the metadata for how to resolve it. So if you look here, we have the media field, and what we can do is copy this and paste this in, and this should give us back the image. So there we go. We have the image. Okay, so now we have an idea of how Mintbase is laid out. So we can go ahead and pull this back up. We know what Mintbase looks like. All right, so now we're at like 2 out of 3 or 2 out of kind of 4 marketplaces, and like how they work. We're feeling pretty confident about our NFT client that's able to just like interact with these and figure out like useful information as a developer. This is like super important. So now we want to look at how to get Luminite. And so Luminite is another marketplace. And so I purchased a token, this token ID 1636797708043. And so like these token IDs are just a note about that are sometimes harder to extract. So the way that I went about it is either sometimes on the website, they list what the token ID is. So let's just take a quick look. So I think when I went to Mintbase, it may even show me my collection, which would be nice. And then I can probably just hover over and figure that out. But there is a little bit of research to try and figure out what it is that you own, or any of the things that you're into. So let's say this, and let's figure out what that token ID is. So this says it's a thing. We're going here, and it's not 100% clear. So I think when I did this one, what I did was I just looked in my wallet to figure out what it was that I had minted. So this is the one under question. And then thankfully, because I have the NFT client, it's easier for me to resolve what it was in terms of token ID. But I think because the standards are so new, people haven't really needed to like know exactly what the token ID is. So that information hasn't been really displayed. Of course, if you know of a better way, feel free to drop by the Discord and let me know, and I'll like gladly shout it out to the heavens. Okay, so we were talking about Mintbase, and then we're talking about Paras, how to resolve these IDs. Paras is a little bit easier to resolve. So if we were to go Paras, ID. So parse IDs, there you go. So they actually just put the token ID more or less right here. And then the thing that you probably won't know unless you know is probably the addition. The addition itself may be a little bit harder to do just from the UI. So that's why you can use our nifty little NFT client, and it will tell us everything that we need to know about the additions. So in this case, this is kind of conveyed through like the numbers. So this is like number 1 out of 10, 4, and 1 of 1 in this case. So the only thing that I would need to grab from this, if I click on it, it tells me, say, okay, cool. So that's how you get the ID from Paras. And then for Luminite is also kind of a similar thing. So I think luminite.com. So boom, we pop into this. Bada bing, bada boom. And if we just hover over the URL, you can just click here. This is actually the token ID. Okay, so let's pop into this. All right, so with Luminite, it's a little bit different. They don't have series or things like that, but they have rich metadata just the same. So you know the drill at this point. We're going to get the NFT contract. We're then going to this just basically sets up the contract connection. We're going to get the token ID. We're going to then check the supply, and then we're going to check the NFT like metadata. And I only have one, so I didn't really go through the whole loop and extract. But you've seen it before, you know how it works. And like now we've kind of discovered the structure of how these things go. And so now we're just going to run our script again, do a little compile. All right, cool. So this is what we have. This is actually not a token I own, but I wanted to check to see if perhaps the format had changed over time, but it hadn't. And so one of the things that is sort of note about this is that in this case, this layout doesn't quite conform to the NFT standard recommendations. So there's a base URL, there's a base URI within the contract, but that base URI doesn't necessarily refer to the reference. And then there's a reference, and then there's the like reference like hash, and then there's the media. But then this isn't quite a URI, so we don't quite know exactly how to resolve it. So internally, they map from whatever this is towards like the storage. So I know that Pinata is an IPFS hosting service. And so I know that if I were to go to Pinata, I think maybe it's even .com, and then I were to take the media hash, I would then be able to resolve this. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. And I haven't tried this, so I could be wrong here. Easiest way is to do this, which probably points. Yeah, so this is another interesting thing about this contract. So this contract does some on-chain storage, and that's like for the smaller version of the image. And for the larger one, if you wanted to click through, you can, so like this one. This one is then fetched from Pinata. So if we were to copy the image address, that, this, oh, actually, it's all stored on chain for this one. Okay, well, some of them are not. If we go here, yeah, pinata.cloud, and then this is like IPFS, and then the gateway, I think, for this is this, copy, and we'll see if we can't resolve it. No guarantees. Yeah, there we go. Whammo, we got success. So we were able to just like look at the description and figure out the mapping. Okay, so in this devlog, the last one, the sort of test to just make sure that we understand the structure of the NFTs that we're going to try and put on the marketplace is this get tiles of Lisbon. So go ahead and do that. Okay, cool. And this was just sent to me by, I think, Vlad from Human Guild. And yeah, it's just like a one-off. But you can see it has a media. If you go to the media, you can resolve how to display this. So we go here. Ah. All right, cool. No. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so cool. We can see the image. It works right. And then we know like when it's issued at, how many copies, the title and description. I'm the creator of this, which is cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much so what I would say is like one of the things that we did today from the devlog, which was basically figure out like what people are listing. We've already started building out the actual marketplace and contracts and the testing framework, which is pretty dope. And you know, probably sometime this week I'll end up stepping through how exactly we're managing to talk about fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, and like sort of swapping mechanism. All right. that's it for tonight. I will see you next time. Thanks.